Buongiorno a tutti e a tutte, soprattutto tutte. No, scherzo. Benvenuti e benvenute nella sala anziani, una sala molto fresca che noi abbiamo preparato e su cui ci siamo preparati proprio per combattere i cambiamenti climatici, quindi niente condizionatori. Parla la mia altra delega alla transizione ecologica, no scherzo. Vi do il benvenuto e vi ringrazio per essere qui a metà di questo percorso, chiamiamolo trekking urbano sull'uguaglianza di genere, che è iniziato ieri e va avanti fino a domani, quindi siamo proprio a metà. E, sì, che vuole essere appunto anche, questi 3 giorni vogliono essere anche un'occasione, anzi l'occasione per celebrare un anno di piano metropolitano per l'uguaglianza. Quindi ecco, sono 3 giorni, ieri è stata una giornata molto intensa, oggi altrettanto e domani speriamo che lo sia anche quello. Quindi benvenuti e vi ringrazio per essere qua. Allora, dobbiamo aspettare ancora qualche minuto che la nostra grande lecturer si colleghi, quindi la Zaida Mucci Martinez, che non si è ancora collegata, quindi aspettiamo ancora qualche minuto. Lo dico anche perché è collegato, così non pensa che siamo scappati o che abbiamo annullato la riunione. Lo devo dire in inglese? Sì. Ok, so for the people who are connected, please don't run away or don't think that we have run away. Just stay connected because we're just waiting for the first speaker, Zaida Mucci Martinez. So please stay with us for a few minutes more. Beh, intanto per ammazzare il tempo volevo intanto ringraziare tantissimo lo staff che ha lavorato sul piano, che lavora quotidianamente sul piano metropolitano per l'uguaglianza, oltre che alla nostra grande vice sindaca che come si chiama? Lo porta anche lei per quanto riguarda il comune. No, lo staff che ci lavora tantissimo, lavora sul piano, ma che ha lavorato su questi 3 giorni, su questo mini festival dell'uguaglianza e del nostro piano. E quindi sì, grazie mille, perché comunque questi 3 giorni appunto non vogliono essere un convegno classico, vogliono essere veramente una serie di momenti in cui ci si confronta, ci si conosce, si cerca di capire cosa viene fatto in tante diverse realtà, e questa in particolare vuole essere un po' la sessione europea, per quello europeo e internazionale, perché abbiamo anche il Brasile. E vogliamo appunto, la gestiremo in inglese proprio perché è una sessione internazionale, perché comunque abbiamo ospiti che ci seguono anche a livello europeo e internazionale, quindi vabbè, insomma. Allora, come dicevo, grazie allo staff e a chi ha lavorato sia al piano, chi lavora tutti i giorni al piano, ma anche a chi ha organizzato questi 3 giorni, Simona Lembi in particolare. Allora, questo panel, come vi dicevo, ha 2 caratteristiche. Anzi, parliamo in inglese. This panel has 2, let's say, features. One is that it wants to open up to other experiences, other contexts at the international level, European and international, so looking at different cities' experiences and so on. So we want to really open your mind as much as possible on the different possibilities, think outside the box, and discover things that are not done here or are done here differently. And the other feature is that it's linked to the title itself. So the idea of working on gender and urban planning, because it's a fundamental thing. The way we think the urban planning is the way then that influences our life, the way in which we live the city, the way we move, the way in which we use public space and all that. And it's also, let's say, the trigger for having equality or for not having equality. And therefore how to fight it is also through urban planning. And so having a methodology that helps including this element in the way we think the city and we plan the city. So the person, the personality, the authority, the maximum authority in this arena that, you know, in the academic world, but also, you know, in relation to other experiences that are social, administrative, of cities, and so on, is Zaida Mushi Martinez, who is working and thinking and reflecting on these kind of issues since a very long time. So we welcome her here for a lecture that we hope she is connected now to be able to give. We know it's going to be extremely inspiring, sorry, not expiring, excuse me, inspiring, and basically she's done a lot of work in this field as a doctor in research in architecture from the Universidad Politécnica de Catalunya, but also from Monterrey, the University of Monterrey. So she will tell us, she will share with us what she thinks are new ways of thinking the organization and the development of cities, thinking gender-wise. Yeah, so that's the proposal we will get from her, a series of proposals and reflections that we will get from her. So if you are connected, Zaida, if you hear us,
hello.
yes, hello, welcome.
Yeah. Hello.
I hope you have a ventilator or a air conditioning system.
Yes, I have something here. No,
fine, perfect. And so welcome to us. We are very pleased to welcome you, and we are very privileged. We feel very privileged to have you with us. So thank you for getting on with your big lecture. We look forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work. Let me see if I can share everything. It's okay, no? Are you seeing my... Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I prepared a short introduction about what is the gender perspective and why we have to introduce gender perspective in urban issues. Sorry. First of all, I want to explain all in this lecture why city for women. The idea is that constructing gender equality, cities that were equal for everyone, not without the problems that we face now, because the urban planning has been done as it was neutral and universal, and we know that does not exist this kind of regard. This false neutrality in planning ignores the diversity in our society that relates that with gender, but also with origin, social classes, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation. So the idea is that we have to stop to see the people and society as a whole unit, and looking and trying to understand the differences to give answers that not suppose inequality as it now happens. The last 50, 60 years, maybe 70 years, we have been building a segregated city, a city that is not sustainable at all, a sprawl city that eat all our time, all our territories, and also this kind of cities is based on the duality of the gender roles. So we have to look for a compact and multi-center city that is designed from the everyday experiences. So we have to ask for whom are the cities, and also how we build the cities, and it's in the public space where we can see and where the project and the planning demonstrate the inclusion or exclusion we are obtaining for that. So this is from our friend Eva Kai. She always explained that the city is about urban structure and about mobility conditions, and with these two qualities, or condition and qualities, it gives us what kind of quality of everyday life we have. And that means urban structure is the proximity. We need, obviously it's not only one city or only one center, as I said before, it's a multi-center city that gives us the proximity, the capacity of the proximity, and also the mobility condition that the pedestrian must be a priority, and also the public transportation. And many places we have known that. So our cities are designing and are designed with a lot of light in the shadow. We are not seeing what happened with the caring works, with the people that needs other time, other support. Usually our cities are designed, are thought as everyone has the same capacity, the same age. Usually it's not taken into account what happened with the everyday life, with the reproductive work. So we need to look and to be able to visualize and recognize the different users of the different groups. So as also in Vietnam said, gender plus, that means social roles, the different life phases, cultural and social background, and specific needs. One to begin with the different patterns that are influenced by gender roles. One is the way we move. The masculine gender role, that it's hard to explain in a brief sentence, but when we are talking about gender roles are not equal as sex, women and men, but the gender role of women traditional is done by women. Anyway, if a man or a woman, the one who do this kind of work, the gender feminine work, this work is not visible in the city, it's not in the center of the project. So we can see that in the way we move. The gender masculine role is usually a point-to-point movement from house to work, from house to other activity, and the feminine gender role usually is it has different, the journey has different stops. It's a kind of useful path, and if we have people under our care and the feminine gender role, care usually is much more complex. For that is so important to have this proximity, this quality of the pedestrian spaces. As Inés Sánchez Madariaga also, she made a very, very interesting study in Madrid, because we have to change the way we consider mobility. This is one of the main issues if we want to have more equalitarian cities. Because what are the needs of mobility? what are the mandatory mobility and secondary or not mandatory mobility as the public transportation engineer talk about, and do we all move equally? What usually is seen or is considered mandatory mobility are only two activities. One, as you see in the first column, one is the displacement going to work, and the second mandatory mobility is the going to studies, especially to university studies. Not because we are a lot, but because there is a lot of people going to the same place at the same hour. And also this consideration of work as a whole, a quantity of people moving all at the same time from one place to other, also is a very industrial way of movement that in our post-industrial cities is not more like this anymore. It was not like that also before, but now it's not like that for everyone. So what are the things that are not mandatory? And for that, what are the movements that we can do or not? It doesn't happen if we don't move because of that necessities. That are shopping, leisure, take a walk, accompany, going with someone, visit someone or the others. For example, in this group is shopping, but not shopping for leisure, shopping for necessity. It's not something that it's not an option, going or not going to get grocery or everything. Or also it's not an option to go to take kids to school. But in this kind of regard, that is this false neutral regard in planning, all these activities are secondary ones. So what Inés Sánchez Madariaga did is she made an encuesta asking which part of this secondary or not mandatory condition or reasons of movement has to do with caring works. That means taking someone to school, taking someone to the hospital, buying everyday elements, necessities. So she found out that 25% of daily mobility is due to this reproductive work or caring works. So it's almost the same that the mobility of work. So, but the problem is that these caring works are not always the same. We are not doing that all in the same moment, at the same time. So the best way of planning, incorporating this kind of mobility is consider the pedestrian capacity of the city, the quality of the public space, and also the proximity of the facilities that are given to do all these kind works. Also, if we look safety from a different perspective, also it's not the same what is safety for women, unfortunately, and for men. So in this case, you have an statistics here in Spain, different years of the people and between women and men, and we can see how women always feel more unsafe in public space than men, but also we can see how men, as they grow old, they also feel unsafe. So why happen like that? Because are the ones who are go more walking. In the case of the women use less the private mobility than men, use much more, go walking to much more places, and also because of the gap, income gap Also, women are less able to have an individual or private car. So we use much more the public transportation and walking in the city. And also later it's important to understand different ages, what it means, what are the journeys they do, why, where they move, etc. But it's very important to have this separation in groups of age and also between women and men to understand the way we move and we use the city. So the question is that we have to put everyday life in the center of the planning interest. The everyday life is formed by activities, space, and time, and depend, again, if the activities are in the proximity, are in near spaces and the public space has enough quality, we need less time to do all the things. If instead of that, as now it happens in many cities, we live 30 minutes from every activity, it's very difficult to be able to have this, as you see at the right in this scheme, this equilibrium between the different realms of our life, the productive real, the reproductive real, the social, political, or communitarian real, and our own realm. Nowadays, what happens is the productive realm is the one who fight everything, every hour, and the other things we do what we can. So the concept of daily life encompasses the development of all those activities we develop in our day-to-day or eventually. Everyday life can be separated from a shared space and a finite time. And from the feminist urbanism, that is it's similar on gender perspective applied to urbanism, but it's a step further as the feminists, as we understand, feminism as we understand, is the radical conception that women are persons, so we have the same rights that men to everything. And this principle of feminist urbanism aspires to a social transformation, eradicating inequalities and breaking gender stereotypes. What are the principles? One is to do or to have deeper analysis of reality, be able to understand why, who, and when people use the spaces. The priority to everyday life and people's diversity. Also, value reproductive and care tasks. It's not to deny the caring work. It's the opposite. It's to put in the center of our values the caring task, because without them there is nothing before. So the other thing that's very important is the interrelation of the different aspects of life and spaces. Again, it's not the same to have and the school 5 minutes walking in a good public space, accessible and safe, that to have 5 minutes walking but in the middle of the road with no light at all, not safe at all. So it's not only a condition of distance or time, but also it's a question of condition of the public space. Also, we have to acknowledge diversity of bodies and abilities. People are diverse. Our life makes us diverse, long life. So how can we introduce all these variables? Also, we have to break social hierarchies and among disciplines. The cities, and I came from the architecture background, and we are not the only ones who design or who decide over the city. There are many other practitioners, professionals who has their own knowledge on the city, and especially people who live in the cities are the best mates to understand what is happening in a neighborhood, in a city. And as I have been saying, proximity as an urban quality, as the first quality in a city. So when we talk about gender and proximity, it's almost it's impossible to separate these two words. That means talk about inclusive cities, recovering, especially obliterating neighborhoods, and more than ever, we must look for the forgetting ones in terms of gender, age, class, and opportunities, putting women's gender experiences at the front. And just to finish, this city or this neighborhood with a feminist city and with gender perspective, it isn't a formal result. It's a process. It's very important to change the way we understand, the way we analyze, the way we see, the way we look, the cities, the neighborhood. And after that we can find the solution. But it's not a normalization of solutions, because it depends on the place and on the people who lives there. So feminist city and with gender perspective, it's a different regard. It makes visible the invisible from the hegemonic discourse, masculine, class, ethnocentric. Grazie. I don't know if you can follow me.
Thank you, Zaida. Really, thank you very much. I would have gone on. I thought you would have gone on. I mean, it was so inspiring and so interesting. Thank you.
Next year I can in person there, but
exactly.
as you know, I'm moving and I'm in a big mess now.
Whenever you want, we will, have you with us. We'll be very happy to have you here with us. Okay, so maybe some key words that emerge from this talk. So cities need to be multi-centered. They need to be, designed on the basis of the experience, the real experience of everyday life of people, everyone included, and that means looking into, what space is, what time is, what activities connected to those are. Everything has to come into the equation. And therefore, the result of this sort of, let's say, reflection then means having a feminist urbanism, where proximity and process are the two P's, let's say, that will make sure that it's a third P comes into reality, which means a city of people, everyone, not only some people. So thank you very much. And now, so if you want to stay with us, we'll be super happy, but we understand if you have to go on with your move. And so now after this lecture, we would like to move to a panel, sort of, it's not real debate, it's different people who will intervene on different experiences. We will move from Vienna to Brussels to Glasgow in terms of how cities are organized, and also have an international experience. So now we want to start with a city that was mentioned also by Zaida, which is Vienna, and but she's not connected yet. No, okay, so we wait a bit, we go a little bit a bit farther away, and we go to Deborah, we go to Brazil, let's say. Deborah Rocha Faria Jorge, probably you can pronounce it better, sorry. And you're an architect, an urban planner in Universidade Federal de Paraná. So from Brazil, and your experience goes from Brazil to Italy, and you have gone through this, let's say, theme through the eyes of mobility, of urban mobility, right? Which is what also Zaida has underlined in a big way. So it's a good bridge to what Zaida said. So please, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Yes. Hello. Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank Mrs. Lemby for the invitation and to being part of this celebration of the first year of the plan, and also the ones who are here to participate and the ones who are following us online, and to our ancestors who allowed us to be here. To begin, I would like to say that I have prepared this presentation very connected with the values of the feminine, that is loveliness, empathy, consideration, and kindness. If anyone does not feel comfortable with my speech, I ask you to excuse me because it's not my intention. And I also excuse about my English. But as you know, I'm Brazilian, I'm studying here in Italy, so I'm for myself. And also I come inspired by, thank you, the work of Chimanananda Ngozi Adichie, especially when she talks about the danger of a single story. So I want to present you a little bit of my experience in Brazil. I am a white, middle-class woman in my 40s. I am from the south of Brazil, as you can see in the map. Brazil's southern region has the second largest GDP in the country, with an economy based in tech-based agriculture. So it has the largest livestock production. As you know, Brazil is very conscious about this. The second largest industrial production in the country. And we are on the subtropical zone, so it's not as hot as the Amazon or Italy nowadays. It also borders with Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. I'm presenting you where I am from, because I know that when we talk about something, in general, we generalize. So I bring you the specific. And this is also a value. Curitiba, that is my city, is the capital of the state of Paraná, and has become internationally known in the 90s as the ecological capital of the world, and for its public transportation. And this is why Jaime Lerner, that was our major, he stands for the idea of the surface metro, which is known as BRT nowadays, that is bus rapid transit. It adopted some characteristics of the conventional subway, as you know, like payment in advance, level boarding, and exclusive road. The bus station is shaped like a tube, and all urban planning in the city was being coordinated with land use and land occupation, so that the highest density and the tallest buildings would be along the axis of transportation, as you can see in this scheme. So the highest buildings and high density near the public transportation, and the level is going down with the distance of the public transportation. And when we look the city from above, it is easy to recognize where these transportation paths run through. And the BRT model has already been exported to several cities in different countries and different continents. So this is a classic example of the the classical planning. And Curitiba is also known for the large amount of green areas and parks. Therefore, there is a misconception that the whole city is covered by the BRT and parks, and everyone has a good quality of life. Unfortunately, the truth is that we are the 60th most unequal capital in Brazil. And in 2021, 1% of the population with the highest monthly income in Curitiba received 1,049 times more than the 5% with lowest income. So it's a huge difference. And this is why zooming the reality in the realities that are not in the official discourses are for. Almost 2 decades ago, I graduated in architecture and urbanism. As you know, Brazil is known by is known in architecture field by the work of white men as Oscar Niemeyer and Paulo Mendes da Rocha. And to represent, to make you know our work field, in 2020, there were more than 200,000 professionals working in Brazil, of which 65% identifies with the female gender, and only 22% declare themselves black, with more than half of my country's population is black. So the average of the income of white men is almost the double of the black woman. In addition, the concentration of these professionals is in the south and the southeast regions. So this data shows us some inequalities, as lack of recognition of women's work, lack of professionals in the north and northeast regions, and a huge gap and low racial representation. I am part of a generation of architects and urban planners with extremely technical background and little understanding, or almost nothing, of the social dynamics of the space production. So during the first years after graduating, I worked with urban and regional planning in several city halls in Paraná State and Santa Catarina. Even applying all the planning techniques and theories I had learned at the university, I realized that the result was not as planned when there was any result. So I had the privilege of coming to Ferrara more than 10 years ago to do a second level master that literally introduced me to other worlds. During this theoretical, practical, and itinerant course, I experienced participatory territory planning projects with multidisciplinary team. This experience broadened me, my understanding of my profession and my role as an architect. I think it's clear everything that Professor said before about the whole and about the techniques. So moving forward, on my return to Brazil, I dedicated my time to participating and carrying out research related to participatory process. And recently, in the last 10 years, I finally end up participating in the process of insurgent urbanism. This concept is is a work of Professor Faranak Mirafitab, that is a South African woman based in the US. And this notion regards about radical planning practice to respond to neoliberal specifics of dominance through inclusion, that is, inclusive governance. It characterizes the guiding principles for insurgent planning practices as counter-hegemonic, transgressive, and imaginative. Now I'm gonna do a break with my history and present you some data of the research that I've developed in the university as a researcher and as a teacher, and another experience in this insurgent planning. So as Professor has shown, we did a research to understand the patterns of the mobility in Curitiba that are polygonal, as she presented, is the same. That is very different from the patterns of the mobility that we use when we think in the huge scale. I can show you also that the main mode of the transportation for women is by public transport and by foot. And this pattern is accentuated by the lower the socioeconomic status of the woman, the more they use these modes to commute. So vehicles are used when you have the choice to have your own car and make individual movement. And talking about safety, 80%, we did another survey with 590 women in my city, and they don't feel, 80% don't feel safe in public spaces, and 65% consider safety the most important factor in their mobility decisions, and 72% use public spaces for commuting only. So, as we can see with this data, public space is not used as a social space or for other activities, it's just to pass through. And 85% of women are more concerned about how to move around instead of male, family of members and male friends. The age influences in this selection, in this and how they move, and if they have child or not also. And how do we respond to these conditions? Security and mobility are big issues, so they are multiple and how can I say? They are complex. So for resolve the problems, we must act in diverse scales and multi-layer activities. So we must work in spaces for conviviality, infrastructure for everyday life, urban planning, and public policies, because we have to compatibilize all the scales, not focus in just one. So a couple of examples. I worked with one student, Giovanna, in a proposal for neighborhood plan. This is a scale that is in Brazil doesn't exist officially for so long, and 5 years ago we received a resolution of the city minister about that. So it's brand new. We are doing the first experiences. And she worked in this proposal for a neighbor in Curitiba and regards to everyday life. So we used a lot of methodologies of participant, observant workshops, mapping, and also quantity data to make the proposal. That regards measures related to housing, public and mobility and transport, public equipment, and urban safety issues. And here some drawings of this proposal that concerns the pedestrian prioritization, infrastructure for cyclists, speed reduction, new public equipments, urban furniture, and so on. Another example of public policy is the safe stop for women, that allows the bus drivers to drop off passengers on places outside the regular bus stops after 8 p.m. so women can disembark safely close to their homes. Okay. Last week, our president has signed the equal pay law for women and men. So it aims to ensure equal salaries for women and men. That was prevented on our federal constitution, but there weren't regulation of this. So now it's prevent some punitions to the ones who doesn't practice. And to finish on this insurgent urbanism, I'll present you the Salvemos o Bosque da Casagão. That was a movement of citizens to protect this green area that was promised to a shopping center. It would be deforested to become a street, and as we know that it was a public space, we stayed there over 4 years trying to convince the mayor and all the municipality to keep it a green space. So we did a lot of urban agriculture, and after this, nowadays we have the urban agriculture law. So we incentive this practice all over our city, and it was very beautiful to see all the children participating. So we know that women in public space with child, it's a high indicator of the quality of the space. And this is a very beautiful celebration in our labyrinth garden. That was also a semen bank with origin semens of Latin America. And we did some mosaic workshops to do this urban furniture. We did toy trading, cultural activities. Oh, okay. So to finish, I would like to thank you and to say that feminism is about why we do the things and how we do the things. So that's why it matters compatibilize the technical part, the high scale with the everyday life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been extremely inspiring as well. I will really go on with this insurgent planning. I love it. It's really, really innovative and inspiring. So all the things that we've heard till now are all but traditional, ways of thinking and designing the cities. So that's what we wanted. So for the moment, the bar is very high. So now, thank you very much. So now we'll move to the north of Europe in Glasgow. Annette, Christy, Annette, are you there? Do you hear us? Can you connect? Let's see, usual suspense. Non c'è? Or if Annette is not yet there, we understood that she was connected. We have Brussels, just a little bit more south. Lydia Mutiebele from the city of Brussels. She's a councillor, politicians anyway, from Brussels. Is she connected?
Yes, I'm connected.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
So we hear a voice in the far away. Where are you? We can't see you. Maybe are you?
I am connected. I am there.
And what about your video camera? Is it on?
Yes, it's on.
It's on. Right.
Normally you can see me.
We don't see you. So
you don't see me?
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you online only. But again, even yourself, we'll have to welcome you here, huh? Please.
Next time.
Very good friend of your city. Okay, so we'll give you the floor straight away. If you can be concise as much as possible, like 8 to 10 minutes. And I know you're going to tell us on how you're thinking your city in terms of a 2 years project, yeah, to develop the city on the basis of real experience, yeah, as we've heard till now. So you have the floor, Lydia. Go on. Thank you. We are a bit late, so that's why we are very sorry. You'll have to be faster than foreseen.
So, hi, everybody. I am Lydia Mutiebele. I'm Alderwoman for Housing, Equal Opportunities and Public Heritage of the City of Brussels for almost 3 years. As a reminder, women are still seen as a minority, not because there are fewer of them. In fact, they are in the majority, with 52% women and 48 men nationally and worldwide, but because they are still underrepresented everywhere. This goal of urban visibility is part of much broader drive for historical reconstruction, which aims to show that women have in fact contributed enormously at all levels of society, but that the work has been systematically overshadowed by our patriarchal society. It is therefore essential today to deconstruct this legacy of the past by representing more women in all fields: culture, science, architecture, politics, etc. The general mission of the Urban Planning Department is to ensure the harmonious layout of the territory and to a certain extent to plan its evolution. The urban planning can obviously contribute to the creation or maintenance of certain gender stereotypes by reinforcing gender roles in the design of the city. Density, mix, or layout can also have an impact on service, safety, and accessibility, which are not equal for different user groups, including women. Finally, I'd like to add that studying to planning acts and document reports, statistics, plans, specification from a gender perspective, it's also enable us to extract useful information to build a city that is suitable for all. The city has worked on several aspects of gender equality, and the feminization of the spaces is one of the key points of the Gender Equality Action Plan. We are already on the 4th version of this plan, which is evaluated every 2 years at the City of Brussels. Here, I will give you a few examples of measures already in place in various departments of the city. In terms of education, it's obvious that education is the best tool available for changing mentalities. It's also by definition a place of learning where both gender rub shoulders and can meet and reflect on their behavior and the solution that exists, and they can develop on this issue. The Gender Equality Plan for Public Education, launched in 2011, aims to raise awareness of gender stereotype develop critical thinking, encourage non-discriminatory educational practice, raise awareness of equality, and promote participation in gender-neutral activities. This is done through studies days, conferences with teachers and students. Activities are organized in school to promote equality in young people's relationship and sexual practice, and to deconstruct sexist and homophobia stereotypes. In the sport departments, we encourage women to take up the sport and free up more equitable time slots for them, like for soccer, in example. The idea is to create environments where women are safer to play sport, but also to offer moments of co-education that will ultimately encourage exchange and respect between men and women within the team. On a symbolic level, in 2019, following a call by a famous Belgian radio, Sophie Lemaire, on the underrepresentation of women in public space in the city of Brussels, we note that 5% of the streets bore the names of illustrious women. Given this number, it was clear that we need to raise the profile of the women who have made such a tangible contribution to the building of Brussels, and it's the European and worldwide reputation. Today, the city put out a call of citizens for suggestion, and it was decided to reserve 4 streets that we can name by a girl's name. I will give you examples. Eliane Vogelpolski, it's a feminist lawyer. Isa Lavandist, she's the first female who was a medical doctor in Belgium. We have also Chantal Ackerman, that was a figure of the filmmaking in Belgium. More recently, we also renamed a street in the memory of Anis Oseyande, a 33-year-old Nigerian sex worker who was the victim of a brutal feminicide in 2018. We want to highlight by this action the feminization of the public space should not concern women who has achieved great things in the eyes of the world, but it could concern all women. My departments are working on a list of illustrious women as a work in progress, the next version of which soon presented to the council. The city is also working on highlighting other female figures through feminization of the mural paintings and the street in the city with female artists and the theme basis on equality between men and women. A monumental mural project is also in progress at Les Ursulines, and in collaboration with the other painting woman, and it's an illustration of the woman in the street. It's also supported by several projects by feminist associations. The other aspect on which urban planning has an enormous influence and which is directly linked to urban planning is safety. If we want women to take the streets, we obviously need to work on making them feel better in a public space that is more welcoming to them. We recently voted in favor of the Safe in the City motion, which is intended as an addendum for our gender equality plan. To this end, the city has concentrated the feminist nonprofit organization Garants to organize in our city 10 exploratory walks with the local women and to draw up the checklist and guide for urban planners to encourage them to consider and include women in the design of a urban space. The city has also been fighting street harassment and harassment at parties for several years. In the wake of the recent Balance ton bar, I don't know if you heard about this movement, which denounced men's violence and harassment in pub, club, etc. And the Me Too movement, we launched not without my consent, a plan in consultation with the nightlife sector to raise awareness among owners and the general public and to ensure greater safety for a female in clubs. It's also important to emphasize that we are making efforts to address this issue in an intersectional way. For example, street harassment is in many cases of double punishment for women and from LGBTQIA communities. These actions we are planning here are compulsory and sanctioned if the measures are not respected. In this way, the city of Brussels aims to make the perpetrators of aggressions more responsible rather than making the victim feel guilty. At present, it's very difficult for victims to win their case in court. Although we have already begun to train our police officers in these matters, there is still room for progress. 2 fee fines are issued for the type of situation and victims file our complaint. A part of our action plan, we also intended to raise awareness of this issue with the public prosecutor's office. Sexist and sexual violence are a structural problem. So if you want to make progress, it's vital to work them not on horizontally, but Belgium localities, but also vertically. So it's a way to give power to our women in our city and in international level. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Lydia, for inspiring us with the idea that we need to deconstruct the legacy of the past. That's a very, very important thing. Of course, it's not easy. You have to do it in all sectors, including public space and urban planning, but also through institutional governance. So it needs to be changed. And to change these kind of things, it's really difficult because it touches, you know, historical, you know, souls. It touches your identity, it touches so many things. So, merci beaucoup Lydia pour avoir été avec nous et on vous attend à Bologne. Thank you very much. Okay, so now Glasgow, you are there, they tell me. Annette?
Yes, I'm here. I'm waiting. Has my colleague Joe joined the meeting? He was going to put the presentation
Right.
online.
Okay. So, sure.
He's going in. Yeah, messages trying to get in now.
So, Annette, just a quick word about you. You're a politician in Glasgow, and basically we've found you through Eurocities, right? We've met at the Urban Brussels conference a couple of weeks ago, if you remember. But we are very happy that you're with us. You are like pushing for a gender equality task force within Eurocities, finally. So good.
Yes, yeah, absolutely delighted that this task force has been formed. It's something very close to my heart, gender equality and UN SDG number 5, empowering women and girls.
Sure.
And just about every speech I make, I always mention SDG 5 and women's equality. I think, Joe,
so I'll give you, if you can, if you can be as brief as possible, because we've started late and also with the connections that didn't work, we have lost a bit of time, but we are very happy to hear you. Don't speak too fast because we know that Scottish accent is not the easiest to understand. No, I'm joking. Okay, thank you very much. You have the floor.
Okay, if I could just ask Joe to share the presentation if possible so that it all makes sense when I speak.
So if you want, we have your PowerPoint and we can move it on.
Oh, great. Yeah, so if you bring that up and I'll just say when to change the slides.
Let's see, that'll show it. The staff was loading it. I'll try and follow you while you talk. Yeah. So meanwhile, we still have 55 minutes. So next speakers be fast. Okay, perfect. Is this one?
That's the one. That's the one. Okay. Yes, so slide number 1. Glasgow is very much a feminist city, the UK's first feminist city, but we still have a long way to go. So delighted to work together with other European cities, sister cities, as we take this agenda forward. La Cité de la Donne. So if we can move on to slide number 2. So most of you, I'm sure, will know that Glasgow was the host city for COP26. That was in 2021. That's an event we took great pride in hosting it and ensuring that the urban voice was heard, particularly women and girls, to ensure that we delivered a people's COP. And all of that is in line with Glasgow's city motto, which is People Make Glasgow. Now, some of you may have been surprised that Glasgow was chosen as the COP26 host city because Glasgow is known as a post-industrial city, a city that was once blighted by unemployment and the associated diseases of depression and despair that come with that. So yeah, it may have been a shock that Glasgow was chosen for the location of COP26, but there was a very good reason it was chosen. Those of you who do know the city may also know that Glasgow, that the Gaelic name for Glasgow means dear green place. And so COP, it was recognised, and we were chosen as the host city in 2021 because Glasgow has transformed itself using culture and the creative industries as the engine for this change and reinvention of the city. So, sorry, I'm still on the previous slide. If you want to go back, I'll tell you when to change. So for us, it was no surprise that Glasgow was chosen because we have been spoken of as the Glasgow miracle, this reinvention of our city through culture and the creative industries. And like every city in Scotland, our origins lie in our Celtic roots and legends. St Mungo is, and you'll see these images these on the screen here, they are murals, part of the mural trail in Glasgow, part of that cultural regeneration. And St Mungo on the left, that's him depicted as a homeless man. St Mungo is our patron saint. He's known to every Glaswegian. And the other motto of the city, the main motto, is how St Mungo brought back life to a tree that never grew, and life to a fish that never swam, and a bird that never flew. And on the right, the image, the mural on the right is of St Mungo's mother, St Enoch. She really is the first named woman of Glasgow. She was the daughter of Lothe, who was a 6th century pagan king of the Lothians. And St Mungo was raped by a man she refused to marry, and which meant she became an outcast. When she became pregnant, she became an object of shame and was banished because of the man's sins, not her own. And she found sanctuary in a home in Glasgow, a city that to this day has honoured her memory and St Mungo's memory and prides itself on being a place of welcome and social justice. Historically, Glasgow has welcomed many immigrants, migrants from all around the world. Many Italians within those, and we are Scotland's only asylum city and the largest asylum destination in the UK for asylum seekers who are seeking refugee status. If I could move on to slide number 3, please. Next one.
That one?
That's the one. That's the one. So La Clydeside Rosa. So like Bologna, Glasgow is famed for being a red city. Now, Bologna's nickname stems from its red tiled roofs in the city, and that complements what Glasgow has. We have red sandstone buildings, old tenement buildings, which are really part of the character and the heritage of our city. And you may recognise the paintings on this slide. One is the funeral of Togliatti, painted by Renato Guttuso, which hangs in the Museum of Modern Art in Bologna. And alongside that, there's a painting by Ken Curry, a Glaswegian artist, and that image is of the Calton Weavers Massacre in 1787. Now, that event was a catalyst for the creation of the trade union movement and working class struggles. And it's a struggle whose spark was lit by these industrial workers who were mainly women. And so the myth of Red Clydeside was born. And why do I say myth? Because we as women know only too well that we're often written out of history or not even mentioned at all. And with these red Clydeside ladies, sorry, I've just lost my place here. They were swept under the carpet, completely forgotten about, that women were behind this trade union movement. And racial, religious discrimination that went on for centuries, that barred Catholics from well-paid jobs in our shipyards, and it tossed women on the scrap heap at every economic downturn because always the men were favoured. If I can move on to the next slide, please. That's right. So the next slide.
Next.
Okay. So just for moving on, for most of recorded history, as I mentioned, women have always been sidelined, if not silenced completely, by men who have named the built environment after themselves. So now is the time to look at our cities and countries' heritage and bring those women who have been ignored to light. Now, can you imagine a different Bologna? An Italy where women are commemorated in statues and streets and buildings, even in the hills and the valleys. Now, this is the task we've set ourselves in Glasgow, and a key part of that in helping us boldly imagine this is a book by a woman I'm very proud to call my friend. Her name is Sarah Sheridan. And if you ever come to Glasgow, and I hope you do, her book is required reading, and it's called Where Are the Women? A Guide to an Imagine Scotland, where those women are recognised and the streets are renamed in their honour. Now, I'd mentioned COP26, and Glasgow worked with a number of partners and key networks, such as Eurocities, and through other initiatives like the European Mayors Alliance for a Green Deal and Just Transition. And having suffered from deindustrialisation and bad economic policies in the 1970s and 80s. So it was vital that for Glasgow to share its learning from history and that our people did not suffer from the disastrous profit-driven economic decisions that had decimated our communities. And that often put the responsibility for resulting social problems on the shoulders of women, who in their roles as mothers and carers saw communities blighted, often blighted by a wave of drugs, and their children's future robbed from them. So a just transition must benefit everyone. And as we saw during COVID-19, and we recognise the triple burden that women faced and their role as workers, carers, and community anchors also. Now, that fueled the main manifesto commitment that my party was elected on in 2017, where we ended a decade-long equal pay dispute. Our city government decided to put its money where our mouth was. And finally, earlier this year, we agreed to pay around £770 million to settle that equal pay claims to women who had suffered sex discrimination. Now, these were council workers who were underpaid and not being paid the same as the men on the same sort of grading and job evaluation. These women not only had the council previously let them down, but they'd been abandoned by trade unions who had told them that they'd no legal case. But that all changed when my party were elected in Glasgow in 2017. And we confirmed that we would instruct the council not to fight their claims. So that is equality in action, because it means equitable outcomes. We've jumped on a wee bit here, but can I see the next slide, please? No, sorry, can you go back a bit? Sorry, that's jumped all over a wee bit. Back one more. And the one before that, if I could. Yeah, that's the equal pay, just transition.
You just have 5 minutes left to talk? Okay,
sorry, okay.
Yeah, you can just go a bit faster. Thank you.
Okay. You're all in Bologna. So I'd just like to speak about Fellini's La City delle Donne. That borrows its title from a medieval book by an Italian-French poet, Christine de Pizan, The Book of the City of Ladies. Now that book includes discussion between Christine and 3 female virtues, which are reason, rectitude, and justice. And it helped Christine to build the foundation of the city, as well as pick women who would reside there. And reason, one of the virtues, held a mirror up to Christine so she could see her own image, her true reflection, not as the men had wanted her to be. So each woman chosen by these virtues to live in a city acts as a positive example for other women to follow. These women are also examples of the positive influences women have on society. And I'm proud to say that I am part of a balanced gender cabinet in Glasgow that ensures women are around the table making decisions. We can move on to the next slide. Councillor Susan Aitken is the leader of the council in Glasgow. You see her on the left there, and she led the Scottish National Party to victory in 2017, and that was the first political change in Glasgow in over 40 years. In 2019, she won Local Politician of the Year for her leadership in ending the equal pay dispute. And in 2021, she also took Leader of the Year for her work in amplifying the importance of post-industrial cities and addressing the climate crisis. The same year, on the left, you'll see another of my colleagues, but Bailey Jacqueline McLaren, who won the Community Champion Award for her extensive working with community groups. And Jacqueline was honoured the year after that for her work by being voted as Glasgow's first citizen and became the Lord Provost, our civic and ceremonial leader. They're two women that I'm sure Christine de Pizan would be proud of and would have included to build her City of Women. If we move on to the next slide. So how do we ensure a just transition for women and build a city by and for women? To look forward, we must look back and measure our progress. Now, like Jacqueline McLaren, as I've just mentioned, as well as a councillor, I'm also a Bailey for the City of Glasgow. And Bailey is a Scots honorary title given to a councillor who represents the city at civic receptions and international engagements. And next year, 2024, sees the centenary of the first ever female Bailey in Glasgow, Mary Barber, who's captured there in statue form. Mary campaigned over 100 years ago against poverty and with specific policy demands to counter women's poverty, such as maternity benefit, education, the vote, and a national minimum wage. Glasgow's scale and development into the second city in the British Empire contributed to its greatest social problem, housing. But housing, the problem was overcrowding, and the tenement flats that I mentioned earlier, those red, beautiful tenement flats that characterise the city's housing. But unfortunately, 85% of the Glasgow's population lived in overcrowded tenement flats, and many of them died in them. And during Mary Barber's time, they were slums. But Mary helped form the Glasgow Women's Housing Association, and that was set up to bring women of all political parties to agitate and drive for better housing in Glasgow. And her political activism began in earnest during the Glasgow rent strike in 1915. And it was seen as seditious at that time because it was during the First World War. And she actively organised tenant committees and eviction resistance. She's a peace activist, and Mary Barber's army took on the might of the British Empire and stopped female-led families from being evicted by sounding the alarms and their own call to arms with pots and pans from their kitchens, bells and whistles, and even football rattles. So if we can move on to the next one, please. Now Glasgow continues in Mary's journey. Now we provide holiday food and activity programmes for children out of school time. We're rolling out universal free childcare and advocating for legal change and powers that will create buffer zones and protect women accessing reproductive and abortion services. Now Bologna is home to the most prominent Italian library devoted to women's studies and feminism. And Glasgow also has a sister library in the same vein, the Glasgow Women's Library, which is a social enterprise, a museum and learning centre with an extensive archive of historical and contemporary artefacts and materials that celebrate the lives, histories and achievements of women. It supports thousands of women across Scotland every year by coordinating and hosting a range of public events, services, cultural programmes and learning opportunities. And it's the only accredited museum dedicated to women's history in the whole of UK. And this Glasgow Women's Library is also featured in Glasgow City Urbanist's recently published Place Commission report, People Make Places. Glasgow Women's Library is one of 16 place stories in that report. and examples projects and shows Glasgow with creative placemaking. And as a place commission, identify creative places and that need to change the way we view our world. Right. So if I could move on to the next slide. Yeah. So Fellini again. Society has come a long way since Fellini's film depicted a man who voyages through male and female spaces towards a confrontation with his own attitudes towards women. At one point being confronted by a feminist convention. Now, recent decades have seen increased consideration given to how planning and design satisfies different needs, the needs of all peoples, and where all needs are considered equally, and within a growing acknowledgement that men and women experience cities differently. UK cities have maybe lagged behind some European comparators, but the acknowledgement that spaces can be better shared is now translating into core services in Glasgow, particularly planning to better deliver gender equity. Rooting gender in our places, in our communities, planning and design removes it from just being about security and services. Those two are important, but it also mainstreams the agenda across those core council services instead of putting them in a silo or just adding them in at the end as an add-on. Much like the sustainability agenda, if we are to deliver fair, more equal and healthier cities, these agendas can't sit in their own little ghettos. We have to take an everyday life approach. The sustainability agenda has both accelerated feminist planning and provides multiple opportunities for it to dovetail. In particular, the redistribution and rebalancing of public space. In short, giving over more space to people, particularly women, and how we encourage more people onto public transport and away from private car use. In Glasgow, we have a livable neighbourhoods project, a project that's spread out over the next decade, rooted in place principle and adopting the 20-minute or 50-minute city neighbourhood concept. And we've commissioned a toolkit from consultants to look at this specifically through a gender lens, including transport, because of course transport has been focused in the past, mostly on radial routes because of traditional commuting to the office or the factory, particularly men's routes. And it goes back to the Victorian design of a city that suited the man going to the office or going to the factory. But now we're trying to look at the routes that women take, which is often via schools or kindergartens or to visit their elderly relatives. So you've kind of moved on. Okay. So if we go back one slide, when I was first elected in 2017, as you know, Glasgow's new city government's number one commitment was to end institutional sex discrimination in the council. Sorry, it's the previous slide. Our goal was to, sorry, if you go back one slide. So when we were elected, we developed...
We have to cut because we still have 4 people.
Okay, all right.
Maybe go to the conclusion, so I'm sorry.
It's okay, if you go to the final slide then.
But we like the Raffaella Carrà reference, huh? But anyway.
Okay, so well, what I've been trying to do in the presentation, and I'll send on my notes so you can see what I've been trying to say. I wanted to demonstrate the shared goals of Bologna and Glasgow, our common histories, and where possible different solutions to the same challenges can be approached. I know that our cities share a history of social justice, and women are at the forefront of this. As feminists, we're often portrayed, even when it's meant to be humorous, like with Fellini, as harpies and harridans. Therefore, I think it's only appropriate that we end with a quote from one of Bologna's most famous daughters, the feminist Italian icon, La Signora Raffaella Carrà, and her famous words, "Show him it is not a game. Let him know what you want." Well, actually, I would say let more than know what you want. We must take what we want. There's a phrase in Glasgow that time and tide waits for no man. So we will no longer wait for men to change the world that we live in. We will do it ourselves. And that's the message that I really want to end on today. So sisters and feminist brothers that may be on the line, something that the women of Glasgow do, we wear our hearts on our sleeves, we've got fire in our souls, and our voices cannot be controlled. So let those voices be heard loud and clear, because the solutions are feminists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you really very much for having taken the time to be with us. I know that we pushed, but I know that it was the right thing to do, because we really liked your presentation. Thank you very much, especially from Simona Lembi, she's telling me, and the staff. So, and thank you for having brought all these reference to Italian and Bologna, you know, culture world, from Fellini to Togliatti to Carrà, everyone. So we got your message. Thank you very much. We all share it. And so with, and let me take this as well from Susan Aitken, which I adore. She's the best mayor in the world, apart from Bologna mayor. With reason, rectitude, and justice, I give the floor to Luisa Bravo, who is the president of City Space Architecture, with a long experience in urban planning and gender. There is an exhibition, by the way, going on at the moment in Palazzo Malvezzi, but she can tell you more about it. And she has a pact of collaboration with our municipality on the sort of regeneration of a space in front of your center, which I've seen, and it's really interesting. So I give you the floor, Luisa.
Thank you.
Please be short.
Yes, I was just asking, how much time do I have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay, wow. Okay, so I'm happy to be here in this panel, since we are sharing European perspectives and international perspectives. I'm a local player here, so but I still want to share with you international perspectives. And today I will be addressing this topic of public space in regard of women's right to the city. I've heard the public space mentioned many times during previous presentations, so I think it is important to actually link public space to urban design and urban policies and the right to the city. I would like to just give you briefly a few information about myself. I am the founder and president of City Space Architecture, which is a non-profit organization based in Bologna, but we work internationally. We are celebrating 10 years of activities this year, and we have been very active in promoting a lot of projects, initiatives related to public space. If you go on the website, you will find a lot of stuff to read, but just to give you an idea of one of the main projects that we are developing, we have established the first ever journal entirely dedicated to public space, the Journal of Public Space, in partnership with UN Habitat, the United Nations Human Settlements Program. Since 2016, we cooperate with the United Nations to promote public space at the global level. So we are an active stakeholder that is invited to present projects, initiatives, organizing workshops, exhibitions, and more at UN events. So, for example, in the last World Urban Forum in Katowice last year, 2022, we launched this special issue of the Journal of Public Space on universally accessible public spaces for all, which was the result of a one-year collaboration with World Blind Union. So the idea is that public space must be inclusive. In regard of people with disabilities, in this case, but also in regard of women. How do we incorporate women in public space? Previously, I was invited also to speak at the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi in 2020. I am not a real specialist in feminist urbanism, but through this city space architecture in these past 10 years, I've been engaged in many discussions. You know, I'm a woman, so since I'm working a lot on public space, so I've been invited to speak and to give my perspective, you know, on public space and gender. So this is the level of discussion, actually, that you see in these global events, and we are pushing for gender equality, so SDG number 5, but of course related to SDG 11, which is on sustainable cities and communities. And so then with city space architecture, we have also developed another project that you can find online, which is empowering women, public space and climate change, also linking public space and the role of women to this very urgent challenge, which is climate change. This is a joint initiative that we are developing with BIDS Belgium and Rosina Spinois, in cooperation with UN Habitat and the new European Bauhaus. This is an ongoing initiative. We have organized many talks and also events with the UN. One was at the Innovate for Cities conference, which was co-organized by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So again, this is part of ongoing global discussions. But then, of course, I mean, when you go to such events and then you come back home and you are dealing with local issues in your city and in your neighborhood, the effort is to translate those action initiatives and global commitments into some local actions that can actually make a change, a positive change for your city and for your neighbors. So this is the work that I've been doing with city space architecture, which is more an advocacy, a platform, and I feel myself as an activist mostly when I work as city space architecture, even if in my professional career I've been into other situations and also in the academic environment. I've been researching and teaching. I'm also adjunct professor in urban design at the University of Florence. So in different capacities, I'm addressing public space in regard of also gender issues. And I just want to give you, maybe 3 minutes are gone already, but I will try to be fast now. Okay, so I just want to present you briefly a thematic paper that I developed for the Global Platform for the Right to the City, which is an organization based in Brazil that is working closely with UN Habitat, and they are tackling the rights to the city through many different perspectives. And then, of course, there is gender, of course. And when they asked me to write this thematic paper on cities and human settlements with quality public spaces, part of the thematic paper is addressing gender issues. And then, of course, it's much longer and it's addressing complexity of public space from different perspectives. You can find it online as a PDF in English and Spanish. So as you can see on the right, here in this slide, the right to the city demands for an anti-racist, anti-colonial, non-patriarchal, and more equitable urbanism. So this is very important when we have to design and manage quality public spaces, because we always say that we want to be inclusive and we want to create a cohesive society. where we give equal opportunities to all. What usually in all these global conversations, leaders repeat is to leave no one behind. This is very important. This is a challenge that we have to consider. Leaving no one behind, which means women, but also most disadvantaged groups and marginalized groups. So being inclusive means to take into account women, but to connect this challenge into a more complex understanding of what quality public space could be. And in this thematic paper, also I deal with the perception of insecurity and fear of harassment in a male-designed public space. So I see women sitting in the audience, and so I believe that this feeling of unsafety in public space is something that you have experienced at least once in your life. Even in Bologna, because sometimes public space can be dangerous or can give us perception of danger. And so people are very much affected by this sense of insecurity, and especially women. In several countries, there are initiatives to actually protect women for this kind of harassment. For example, in Japan, there is, but not just in Japan, in many other countries, there are these women-only trains so that women feel safe when they travel using public transportation. So, of course, this is a solution to address the topic, but I believe this is not the solution, because we need to create the conditions for people to be safe while being together, because public space means togetherness, means create conditions for all. And then, of course, there is UN Women, which is an institution connected with UN Habitat also, since the condition of women also depends from urban planning and public space. But UN Women has developed this multi-stakeholder global initiative for 10 years, working with many women around the world. And also these studies are highlighting how unwanted sexual remarks and gestures happening in the streets, public transportation, schools, workplaces, parks, water and food distribution sites significantly reduce the ability of women to participate in public life, affecting their health and well-being. And so you see here some statistics, and this is a campaign promoted by L'Oréal with this very well-known actress. You know her, right? Kate Winslet. So L'Oréal Paris launched this Stand Up Against Street Harassment program.
Today, more than 80% of women have experienced sexual harassment in public spaces.
Sexual harassment.
Harcèlement sexuel.
Person Cinta Laura.
We see it happening, but most of us don't react. So that each of us can react safely, L'Oréal Paris and the Right to Be NGO have created an educational program.
Stand Up Against Street Harassment by L'Oréal Paris, an expert-proven training program.
It's called the 5Ds method.
Based on the 5Ds methodology, 5 simple actions to help combat street harassment every day.
Distract, delegate, document, direct, delay.
Stand Up has been launched in more than 37 countries.
From Paris to New York, from Dubai to New Delhi, 800,000 people have been trained around the world with an aim of 1.5 million trained by the end of 2022. Because learning how to react when faced with street harassment
helps create a world where we can move forward freely.
Now it's your turn.
Join the movement.
Stand up against street harassment.
Stand up.
We have to stand up to it.
Please join me in taking the stand-up training.
Let's stand up together. We can all be a part of the solution.
So you can also take the training online to stand up against street harassment, because this is important to underline. This is an issue that it's not just related to women. This is an issue that is related to the society at large, because the training explains that everyone can actually support women when they are harassed in public space. So it's not just a system of defense for women, but it's also a way for other people, women and men, to support women when they are harassed. So the question is, if you see some unwanted attention to a woman in public space, will you be able to help? Will you be willing to help? So the model that now it is very much discussed in urban planning theories is the caring city model, so that the feminist policies can be integrated in urban planning and public infrastructure for community care. Because designing a city for women means to design a city that works well for other social groups, like older persons, children, and people with disabilities. And also we have to consider that as human beings, women are different from men in terms of biological issues. So I've put here a very well-known artwork by this artist, Lars Ramberg from Norway, which are public toilets. And women know that public toilets in public space are very important. And we have to take this seriously, because in public space there are many activities, sleeping, sitting, using a toilet, drinking, clean water, and have fun and walking and so on. So those kind of activities require proper infrastructure. So I will leave you now, because my time is ending fast, to this exhibition, as the Deputy Mayor announced, Imagining Public Space with For Her, which is now exhibited at Palazzo Malvezzi. You can still see the exhibition tomorrow morning. This was displayed at our Museo Spazio Pubblico, which is the operational headquarters of City Space Architecture in the Saragozza neighborhood. Yes, exactly. This is supported by the Metropolitan City of Bologna and Plan for Gender Equality. So I encourage you to visit the exhibition. It is also online on the website of Museo Spazio Pubblico. So I thank you again, and if you can go online, you can check all our projects and initiatives, and we will have this public symposium in September, the 4th of September, to talk about public space. We would like to have also a focus on gender issues with Simona and Annalisa. So let's see soon how we can develop more this topic.
Grazie mille Luisa, grazie anche per essere stata più breve del previsto. Andate a vedere la mostra e andate a trovarla nel suo nido, perché è veramente un luogo molto interessante. Allora adesso, se volete accomodarvi, perché non ci sono abbastanza sedie, chiamiamo, if you don't mind going back to the audience, and we call Laura Gramugli e Chiara Nerozzi, che fanno parte dell'associazione Spostamenti, che io ho già conosciuto, ho avuto l'onore di conoscere durante il Festival della Sostenibilità a Dumbo, tutte e tre, ok, e anche, come si chiama? Veronica, no, giusto? I due architetti, quindi Veronica Visani e Laura Bonfiglioli, giusto? Che è stato un cambiamento. Quindi In totale sono 3 interventi, perché questo è un duetto, giusto? Quindi, però state veramente non fate per 2, perché sennò siamo rovinati. Volevamo tenere qualche minuto per le domande, ma c'è stato un po' di problema, quindi
assolutamente.
Perché tutti dicono certo e poi non lo... Fare il moderatore significa essere cattivissimi, purtroppo.
Me ne rendo conto, me ne rendo perfettamente conto.
Vi do la parola e niente, vi ascoltiamo, grazie.
Grazie mille per l'invito, grazie mille a Simona Lembi e grazie per questi interventi, questi speech davvero meravigliosi. E il nostro intervento sarà davvero molto breve e inizia con un audio, nessuna immagine, nessuna slide, nessun PowerPoint, solo audio, quindi vi chiediamo magari di chiudere gli occhi e di ascoltare con molta attenzione. Grazie.
Voglio dire che è una cosa da femmine. Mi chiamo signorina. La signorina chi?
Si sentiva dire che era l'unica femmina, che era meno forte, che correva più piano, che non aveva la testa degli altri e quindi ha deciso di abbandonare.
Piena delle pacche sulla spalla, delle mani messe sulle gambe o sulle braccia.
Allora non sei molto a posto.
Cose, alcune sono anche abbastanza violente, episodi proprio di bullismo che ho subito e che forse non penso che bisogna far piangere chi ci ascolta.
Se penso alla disuguaglianza di genere, penso alla situazione delle mamme lavoratrici.
Quando si trovava a dire di avere una figlia molto piccola, non riusciva in nessun modo a trovare lavoro.
Mi chiese se avessi intenzione appunto poi di fare famiglia, di sposarmi, di avere figli.
Sono stata presentata come guardate che bella insegnante che vi ho trovato, eppure giovane e bionda.
Facevano i complimenti a me, come se lei fosse stata in qualche modo oggetto della mia scelta o un mio oggetto personale.
L'inclusione di genere io lo trasformo in inclusione dei generi.
Anche se ci piace credere che la società si sia evoluta oltre i rigidi confini dei ruoli di genere, le donne e gli altri gruppi emarginati continuano a vedere le loro vite limitate da quelle stesse norme sociali che sono incorporate nelle nostre città. Leslie Kern, La città femminista.
Ed è esattamente da questa autrice, Leslie Kern, da questo libro, La città femminista, che abbiamo preso ispirazione. Secondo Leslie Kern, le donne vivono ancora la città con una serie di barriere fisiche, sociali, economiche e simboliche che modellano la loro vita quotidiana attraverso dinamiche che sono profondamente, sebbene non solo, di genere. Barriere per la maggior parte invisibili agli uomini che non contemplano le medesime esperienze, ma che si attestano come i principali responsabili delle decisioni, lo sappiamo bene. E partendo proprio da questa considerazione che desideriamo aprire un confronto legato alla vita delle donne sul nostro territorio, un confronto stimolato proprio dal piano per l'uguaglianza di genere della città metropolitana di Bologna. Lo scorso anno ero seduta in sala dell'Archiginnasio per l'avvio dei lavori e ho pensato che fare parte di questo processo non fosse soltanto giusto, bellissimo, ma anche necessario. E così eccomi qui oggi insieme a Chiara Nerozzi, all'Associazione Spostamenti e a una serie di partner fondamentali per costruire una rete che supporti e aggreghi diverse esperienze. Quindi la facciamo breve, con grande piacere vi annunciamo la nascita della città delle donne, una sorta di cantiere che apriremo ufficialmente a ottobre. In realtà i lavori per mettere a terra le fondamenta sono già iniziati e continueranno anche dopo il mese di ottobre, affinché la città che abbiamo in mente non resti un'utopia ma inizi a prendere forma magari nel tempo, attraverso idee, risorse e obiettivi che abbiamo scelto di raccogliere insieme passo dopo passo. Che cosa abbiamo in mente? Abbiamo in mente tantissime cose, un calendario ricco di incontri, workshop gratuiti e momenti performativi e poi ci piacerebbe promuovere e incentivare la cultura dell'uguaglianza e favorire la reciproca conoscenza tra istituzioni, privati e cittadine che desiderino mettere al centro le proprie visioni. Partendo naturalmente da un'idea di partecipazione attiva e progettazione condivisa, ci auspichiamo di stimolare e intercettare l'adesione di associazioni, imprese, istituzioni, professioniste, residenti che vorranno partecipare agli incontri con idee, proposte e racconti. L'avrete capito, l'obiettivo comune è raccontare la vita delle donne nella città da un punto di vista urbanistico, sociale e culturale e capire se e come è possibile agevolarne le necessità di ogni giorno. Ma ci piacerebbe anche raccontare storie, carriere, percorsi personali, conoscendo da vicino professioniste che non si sono mai perse d'animo né di vista, in un percorso alla conquista di una piena legittimazione e rappresentanza, perché come ci ricorda un modo di dire diffuso nella politica anglosassone che abbiamo fatto nostro, se non sei al tavolo sei sul menù. Abbiamo pensato infine a una figura ispiratrice. L'idea è di dedicare la prima edizione della Città delle Donne a Mirella Bartolotti, la prima donna ad assumere un incarico amministrativo nel comune di Bologna e anche la prima assessora ai problemi delle donne in Italia. Ma ci sono molte altre figure che hanno offerto un apporto importante alla nostra città e non solo, e cercheremo di non dimenticarne nemmeno una, magari nel corso delle prossime edizioni, chissà. E a proposito di figure ispiratrici, modelli di riferimento imprescindibili per chi ha la possibilità di affacciarsi a un'attività per la prima volta e scoprire il contributo di chi ha già percorso quella strada prima e l'ha resa praticabile. Concludo con una frase a me molto cara della scrittrice e giornalista Caroline Criado Perez. Quando si esclude il 50% dell'umanità dalla produzione di conoscenza, ciò che si perde sono idee che potrebbero cambiare il mondo. Grazie. Chiara Nerozzi dell'associazione Spostamenti ci racconta chi ci sta aiutando in questo percorso. Stiamo cercando proprio di riuscire a creare delle alleanze, fare rete è fondamentale, per cui anzi se avete voglia di aiutarci e partecipare siamo qua.
Allora, abbiamo ideato questo, abbiamo pensato, desiderato, abbiamo questo sogno con Laura Gramuglia da tantissimo tempo. Lei è speaker, autrice, ha lavorato tanto sul territorio di Bologna su questo tema, e io avevo il compito appunto di dire quali sono le nostre alleanze. E devo dirvi subito una cosa: quando oggi ho pensato di dover venire qua in 5 minuti raccontare quali sono le nostre alleanze, l'ansia mi è salita immediatamente, perché ho detto non me ne voglio dimenticare neanche una, e non ci dobbiamo dimenticare di nessuna. Quella che vogliamo fare con Città delle Donne è proprio un luogo dove non ci dimentichiamo di nessuna e dove creiamo alleanze, dove scopriamo anche che cosa fa la vicina di casa su questo tema, perché spesso noi donne siamo lì a lavorare con grande passionalità. Ho sentito una passionalità oggi che davvero quello che ci manca è lo spazio, ci voleva una settimana per accogliere, e vi ringrazio moltissimo la città metropolitana, le donne che hanno lavorato per costruire questa giornata. Allora parto e chiudo anche dicendo che l'audio che avete ascoltato è stato costruito all'interno di Open Group, che è una realtà molto importante e cooperativa, e come in tutti i settori di cura, 85% è composto da donne lavoratrici. Loro hanno fatto questo bellissimo lavoro per una festa d'autunno dove volevano far crescere la consapevolezza, hanno creato questa installazione e questo era l'estratto di questo loro lavoro. Con l'incontro con loro entra nel nostro progetto tutto lo sguardo sulle periferie, che è fondamentale. E loro arriviamo a conoscerle anche grazie a un'altra, diciamo, amicizia, un'altra soggetto che ci sta sostenendo fin dall'inizio, che è Fondazione Barberini, archivio e centro di ricerca sul lavoro di cooperazione, e altro, diciamo, territorio che ci ha accolto sono le donne delle istituzioni. Abbiamo già lavorato con Annalisa Boni e Simona Lembi ci ha accolto ascoltando il nostro progetto, la vice sindaca, non me ne vorrei scordare neanche una, Erika Capasso, e grazie ad Elena Eletti che ha lavorato nel comune, al consiglio, presidente di quartiere, abbiamo fatto questi incontri con le donne delle istituzioni, le donne della politica, e sono necessarie per questo confronto, perché è con loro e con tutte le associazioni, gruppi, lavoratrici che operano sul territorio che dobbiamo andare a cambiare il volto della città e non dimenticarcene neanche una. Grazie.
Grazie mille Laura e Chiara, veramente è un piacere lavorare con voi, grazie di esistere, cosa devo dire? Bravissime, grazie mille. Allora, mi dicono che Vienna è collegata, quindi le chiederemo di fare in fretta e poi anche alle nostre due speaker successive, mi dispiace così tanto. What's her name? Deborah, no, Lena, are you with us? Yes? Ci fa gli scherzetti. Yes? We can't hear you.
I turned the camera on, but I'm not sure if it's working.
We can't hear you. We can hear you, but we can't see you. Your camera is on, I guess.
I think that the audio isn't good enough with your camera on.
No. Yes, we see you. Thank you very much. Look,
okay.
Yeah, Lena, we have a little problem. It's not technical, it's just time-wise, time-related. We have to give you much less time than foreseen. Can you do that? Can you really be concise and tell us? Because we know that Vienna is a fantastic experience. It's the top #1 in Europe city. You've done so many things. You've created a women's sector. You've done so many things. So I don't know how you're going to capture that in 3 minutes, but if you can be fast, it would be fantastic, and then we can share the PowerPoint or things like that. Is that a good deal? Or? Okay,
yeah, that
do your
works
best.
for me. Unfortunately, the connection is really bad, and I hope that you will be able to see my PowerPoint. I am sharing the screen now. I think I'm just going to highlight the main experience Vienna in 3 minutes.
No, I know, but do your best. Do what you can. We don't hear you well. We hear you like interrupted.
Yeah.
Maybe the line is.
I'm really sorry for the technical problems. It worked before. All right, I think it's best if I turn off my camera.
Yes.
And if I don't share my PowerPoint. 3 minutes.
Thank you. 5. Okay.
Now, as you already mentioned, Vienna has quite a long history gender planning and gender issues in the administration in general, but gender planning so far has been a much younger field that has only developed in the 90s. And we have made a lot of interesting experiences in the last years, especially under Eva Keil's lead, when there was still a coordination office for planning and construction that was geared towards the requirements of the daily life and the specific needs of women. Unfortunately, we don't have that coordination office anymore, so there has been some restructuring, but we can dive into like a great of projects and experiences. I don't have to explain gender planning to anyone. I just want to highlight some of our most important and successful instruments and tools. We have developed some guidelines, for example, on park and playground designs. And the reason why I mention them is because they are by far the most successful gender planning initiative of the city of Vienna, because they are still used up to date in public projects, so public parks and playgrounds, but also used by the private sector. And they are used as a basis for competitions as well. So these guidelines, they were developed by an evaluation of park designs in Vienna, and also by surveys where young girls and young boys were monitored in their user behavior, and together with social workers, with youth workers, we developed guidelines that have been in place and used for over 20 years now, and with the participation of girls of different ages. We followed this very successful model, so we did evaluation of different kinds of model projects and also developed guidelines for the mobility sector and for the housing sector, which is still so these guidelines have proven very there the in private sector by public petition. That is the main model. We also have implemented some instruments in order to reduce gender planning and quality assessment in planning process scales. So their instrument is the FAIR, where we take big strategies and big concepts that usually end with a long list of different measures, and we, together with diversity experts, with social workers, with gender experts, inclusivity experts, we define the most desired target group of a specific project, and that helps us to prioritize from that long list of measures and to really, let's say, create the most efficient and most desired outcome in relation to the mostly restricted resources. And it's similar with the social space analysis that is done before scale projects, where we really identify the user needs and different kinds of interests in a specific area, so by quantitative but also qualitative data. And we translate them into the functional requirements that are necessary for the redesign of public spaces in that specific area. So these are very powerful instruments that I would say we don't use them 100% in every planning process. It does to some level depend on the motivation of individuals, but they are at the moment the most guys that we have. We also have gender-sensitive quality assessments for housing projects and also for competitions for public buildings, where we try to integrate different kinds of requirements such as dimensions, distances, public infrastructure density, but also building height or different kinds of shading requirements, so the public space can really be used. There have been a lot of successful models, but what I really want to highlight now in the last, remaining minute, hopefully, are some of the most common concerns and fears that we often are dealing with. Because it's true that there is, in the beginning of projects, there is a slightly increased cost factor for planning processes. But what we have noticed in our experience is that even though planning processes become a little more complex in the beginning, We do have more efficient investments because we can prioritize our measures within the restricted financial boundaries. And that is argument. I have a common fear of additional workload, which is also to some extent true, because initially there is an increased effort for pilot projects and such, but it diminishes with established routines and is only a matter of the implementation of new procedures and getting used to them. Lastly, some of the obstacles and challenges that we experience and that Eva Keil and other colleagues in this area have experienced for decades is that there is still, to different forms, of course, there is still ridicule of these issues of gender planning in general, and to some level active or passive resistance within the administration. It is still difficult, although it becomes easier because there is more top-down support and because politicians have recognized the synergies with general climate adaptation and climate protection measures that usually also affect multiple disadvantaged groups. And on a structural level, that is an issue that especially affects the whole area of urban design. We do have a lot of conflicting goals, and especially in these times, we have market forces that put a lot of cost pressure, but also time pressure on developers, and we see that it becomes more difficult for them to fulfill certain requirements and quality standards regarding the urban design. So that is where we as a city need to work on our quality criteria and assessments to make it more, let's say, easier to apply and to really this project in mind. Now, lastly, I just want to highlight that now, at the moment, gender planning, I would say, has somewhat come. Its importance definitely has not, but it has, as a term, somewhat moved into the background because currently everything is done by the perspective of climate adaptation and climate protection and multiple other crises and how urban structures can adapt to those. So we see gender-sensitive planning as a prerequisite for fairness. That is also like the historical, has been the historical perspective, but also nowadays as an ecological necessity. So we can take the gender planning experiences in Vienna as our knowledge basis for how we can integrate the needs of certain groups into planning procedures and also recognize the different kinds of vulnerabilities in hindsight to climate change, but also economic vulnerabilities, of course. And that's what we're currently working on, to integrate gender planning, let's say, integrated into the whole climate debate, into our city development strategies. Of course, especially with a focus on spatially targeted measures to the areas where people that are affected by multiple kinds of vulnerabilities and very complex needs, and so we can target our measures and create the most effective outcome. I think that's it in a nutshell. But if there's any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Lena, are you still there? Avete chiuso?
Yes, I'm still
yes, you're still. So I would like to really tell you that we are very grateful for what you brought to us in such a concise way. It was extremely clear, very effective, and it just gave us the idea of what you are doing and the fact that it's really an important, contribution to a European new way of doing urban planning. So thank you very much for being so adaptive, and we stay in touch. Thank you very, very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've heard from big speakers at the beginning with Zaida. We've heard different cities at the European level. We've heard some local actors and trying to move minds as well. And now we want to conclude with two speakers from the local arena, Veronica Visani, che è la coordinatrice della Commissione Pari Opportunità dell'Ordine degli Architetti, lavoro fondamentale, lavorare su queste cose proprio per quello che ha detto l'assessora di Vienna, e Laura Bonfiglioli che invece ha la prospettiva più ingegneri, giusto? Quindi ecco un duetto anche qua molto interessante come chiusura, che ci serve proprio come intreccio fra tutte le cose che abbiamo detto. Grazie mille. Non so chi, Veronica prima e Laura.
Sì, io avevo preparato qualche slide, se posso le scorrerei rapidissimamente per raccontare le attività che sta svolgendo l'Ordine degli Architetti con la Commissione Pari Opportunità. Eccole, grazie. E dunque, gli ordini professionali, non mi dilungo tanto, nascono 100 anni fa, nascono principalmente per tutelare la collettività rispetto alle professioni liberali, e successivamente, soprattutto negli ultimi 15 anni, cominciano invece a svolgere degli ulteriori attività, ad esempio con l'apertura dei lavori a varie commissioni, tra cui appunto quella pari opportunità che io coordino, che è una commissione neonata, nata nel 2021, e proprio per dar seguito. Posso usare il telecomando? Esatto, grazie. Esatto, quindi parlavamo della legge che riguarda poi anche l'Ordine degli Ingegneri di 100 anni fa, e che poi nel corso del tempo l'Ordine cambia le proprie attività, aprendosi alla collettività, aprendo il proprio lavoro a varie commissioni e gruppi di lavoro, tra cui la Commissione Pari Opportunità. Ho riportato in questa slide il numero delle iscritte e degli iscritti all'ordine al 31 dicembre del 2022, che è equamente suddiviso tra uomini e donne, quindi le architette e gli architetti, l'architettura di Bologna e della provincia viene svolta da professionisti in maniera paritaria. C'è da dire però che i dati invece del nostro organo in Arcassa, ingegneri e architetti, quindi la cassa previdenziale, mostra che il gap, il divario salariale tra gli uomini e le donne anche in questo campo è invece molto molto ampio, non rispecchia la parità che è rispecchiata dai numeri, e si vede proprio che se i giovani laureati e laureati in architettura e in ingegneria i primi anni cominciano a guadagnare, a avere gli stessi stipendi, ad andare avanti negli anni più o meno tra i 30 e i 35 anni gli stipendi delle donne ingegneri e architette sprofondano e non raggiungeranno mai lo stesso stipendio invece degli uomini. Quindi questo è un dato, diciamo il gap salariale non rispecchia invece la parità delle professioniste, chi porta, insomma, chi crea l'architettura nella nostra città e nella nostra provincia. E quindi vi dicevo che nasce la Commissione Pari Opportunità, una commissione giovane, nel 2021 io con grande orgoglio ho il compito di coordinarla, e la Commissione ha chiaramente degli obiettivi paritari rispetto a tutte le diseguaglianze. Chiaramente la disuguaglianza di genere è quella diciamo che coinvolge il 50% della popolazione mondiale, quindi è la disuguaglianza più importante, ma le attività che la Commissione svolge riguardano anche diciamo le disparità rispetto alle fasce di popolazione più giovane che si affacciano al mondo dell'architettura, e anche rispetto alle disabilità. Gli strumenti che la Commissione ha adottato sono quello della comunicazione e il linguaggio. Non mi dilungherò ampiamente, anche questa mattina c'è stato un bel approfondimento su questo tema. E tra gli obiettivi, tra i risultati che la Commissione per Opportunità ha ottenuto grazie al Consiglio, che nel 19 ottobre del 2021 ha deliberato la possibilità di adottare il timbro professionale con declinazione al femminile per le iscritte che lo richiedessero. Quindi quando mi sono iscritta io nel 2008 mi è stato consegnato un appellativo al maschile. Ora le ragazze che si iscrivono, le laureate che si iscrivono, possono scegliere anche la declinazione al femminile, e anche io posso adesso ottenere la declinazione al femminile. È stata fatta anche un lavoro sui testi amministrativi dell'ordine, questo seguendo le linee guida che Alma Sabatini nel lontano 87 aveva cominciato già a divulgare con le proprie linee guida, quindi sono stati introdotti tutti i termini declinati sia al maschile che al femminile, questo soprattutto per dare rappresentatività anche a quelle che sono state le posizioni istituzionali raggiunte dall'ordine. Quindi il consiglio attuale dell'ordine degli architetti è composto da 15 tra consigliere e consigliere e c'è una prevalenza di consigliere. Il nostro ordine professionale a livello regionale è uno dei pochi che non ha la presidente architetta, però la vicepresidente, la tesoriera, la segretaria sono tutte femminili, quindi ci aspettiamo magari anche un cambio in questo senso. Però devo dire che tutti gli altri ordini provinciali della regione hanno quasi tutti delle presidenti architette. Il nostro ordine promuove diversi seminari formativi proprio per l'aggiornamento professionale, proprio sulla tematica della pianificazione urbanistica e della pianificazione di genere. Durante uno di questi seminari svolto con l'associazione Sex and the City abbiamo anche sperimentato un servizio di interpretariato professionale in linguaggio italiano dei segni, proprio per fornire la più ampia accessibilità anche alla nostra utenza. E parallelamente all'aggiornamento professionale l'ordine svolge anche delle attività assieme alla rete Ecco, al Festival delle Tecno Ragazze, e quindi è stato svolto un seminario rivolto alla fascia della scuola secondaria per tutti gli istituti tecnici di Bologna, quindi la rete delle scuole aderenti ad Ecco, in cui una consigliera, Cecilia Bione, ha presentato proprio un seminario sulla città femminista, raccontando ai ragazzi e alle ragazze delle scuole superiori quali sono le prassi per rendere la città più accessibile a tutti e a tutti. L'ordine e il consiglio dell'ordine hanno anche attuato delle politiche attive. Cosa mi riferisco? Ad esempio, durante la presentazione del bilancio preventivo del 2023, quindi lo scorso dicembre, all'ordine è stato offerto un servizio per chi partecipava di babysitting, in modo tale che le famiglie dei nostri iscritti e delle nostre iscritte potessero partecipare a questo evento portando anche i propri figli e le proprie figlie. Un'altra politica che ha attuato il Consiglio dell'Ordine riguarda l'estensione della riduzione della quota di iscrizione all'albo, che è una quota annuale che tutti i nostri iscritti e iscritte versano, che viene ridotta per il periodo della gravidanza e che con questa, diciamo, nuova politica è stata estesa anche per le gravidanze interrotte dopo il 61esimo giorno, che era, diciamo, una possibilità che prima non era possibile avere. Tra i progetti a cui stiamo lavorando c'è un progetto che riguarda la toponomastica femminile, quindi dare visibilità anche agli spazi urbani che viviamo tutti i giorni, della presenza di personaggi illustri di genere femminile, e su richiesta del Comune di Bologna abbiamo come commissione lavorato a selezionare dei nominativi di architette e abbiamo proposto la candidatura per l'intitolazione al loro nome di piazze e strade della città. Proprio stamattina la segreteria dell'ordine ha trasmesso al Comune questa prima lista di 10 nominativi e nel frattempo la Commissione sta continuando a lavorare, a preparare queste schede con una breve biografia, le citazioni di queste donne architette, sia del panorama bolognese ma anche internazionale e nazionale, e per continuare in questo progetto anche nei prossimi anni. Un altro lavoro a cui la Commissione ha lavorato in questi ultimi 2 anni riguarda una serie di interviste. Vi invito tutti all'evento che si terrà il 30 settembre all'Ordine degli Architetti in via Saragozza, in cui verrà presentato appunto questa serie di videoclip di interviste che sono state fatte alle prime professioniste operanti nel panorama bolognese e della provincia, quindi l'abbiamo chiamato le pioniere dell'architettura, dove queste colleghe architette raccontano la propria esperienza e danno la propria testimonianza rispetto a un panorama lavorativo che, come abbiamo visto in questi ultimi anni, è notevolmente cambiato, ma quando loro hanno cominciato si trovavano a lavorare principalmente in un mondo maschile, e il cantiere lo è purtroppo ancora oggi. E io avrei terminato, grazie.
Grazie mille. Adesso ci piace concludere con una giovane ingegnera, quindi, che rappresenta l'ordine, no, degli ingegneri e delle ingegnere, che quindi concluderà questo bel pomeriggio, quindi ecco, hai qualche minuto. Grazie mille per la tua disponibilità.
Buon pomeriggio, sono Laura, io ho studiato ingegneria dell'architettura qua a Bologna e adesso lavoro come ingegnere strutturista a partita IVA, quindi l'unico apporto che posso dare a tutto quello che è già stato detto in realtà è solo una breve testimonianza di quello che vuol dire fare questo lavoro nel nostro mondo, e sostanzialmente è un po' come ce lo si immagina. Difficile, è difficile essere riconosciuti come ingegneri, come ingegnere, è molto più facile essere scambiati per un assistente o per la compagna di un collega, quindi è tosta ed è esattamente così, non è così solo in cantiere ma è così anche fra tecnici, questo lo dico con molta amarezza. Quindi mi collego a quello che ha detto la mia collega riguardo al fatto che anche l'ordine degli ingegneri di Bologna quest'anno ha rilasciato il timbro con il titolo ingegnera sotto spinta di una mia collega, e di questo sono molto felice perché è finalmente un segno di apertura non solo verso il linguaggio ma anche verso una parità di genere che nel nostro campo è ancora molto lontana. Quindi sono molto contenta di questo e penso vada festeggiato, anche se è retorico dirlo. Detto ciò, appunto sono ingegnere, quindi non sono particolarmente brava a parlare in pubblico e quindi niente, credo di aver detto.
Del pomeriggio.
No, è già stato detto tutto anche molto più importante, quindi.
No, la ciliegina sulla torta è proprio quella importante. Ok, siamo arrivati alla fine, adesso non so se c'è una domanda dal pubblico che vogliamo soddisfare o se ce ne sono troppe o qualcuno che ha voglia di lanciare una cosa ma proprio velocissima. Siamo un po' stanchi. Tutti i PowerPoint saranno condivisi? Niente. E i video, tutto quanto, quindi poi vi invieremo tutto. Vabbè, niente, allora, abbiamo girato per il mondo, per l'Europa. C'è una domanda? No, ok. Abbiamo girato per il mondo, per l'Europa e poi anche sul locale. Questo pomeriggio vi abbiamo fatto sognare, come si dice? No, scherzo. Però ecco, quello che io dico, che tengo, è che se la pianificazione, o devo in inglese? No, vabbè, tanto ormai siamo sul locale. Se la pianificazione urbana e il design dello spazio pubblico deve essere, questo lo dico in inglese, fit for present e fit for future, non può essere fatto tipo business as usual o come viene fatto in tanti luoghi. Quindi deve essere capace di riflettere il tema della cura, care, no? L'abbiamo sentito molte volte, della sicurezza, della mobilità. Ci sono tanti aspetti che abbiamo visto oggi che quindi devono essere integrati nel modo di concepire lo spazio pubblico, la creatività, eccetera, di concepire lo spazio pubblico e la pianificazione urbana da parte di tutti. Non è semplice perché è una grossa sfida per noi istituzioni, noi amministratori, per i nostri tecnici, per i professionisti, per il mondo dei professionisti, per le persone in generale, perché è un cambiamenti molto proprio deve spostare le menti in maniera e toccare il cuore in maniera molto, molto forte. Però lo dobbiamo fare perché comunque è necessario per la giustizia, per una questione di giustizia sociale, di fairness, no? Come ha anche detto Vienna, e perché c'è il tema climatico che comunque è collegato. Quindi non è neanche una scelta, cioè si deve andare e basta. Il tema è condividere tutte queste esperienze, usarle per poter appunto migliorare, innovare, cambiare il modo di fare queste cose. Quindi grazie a tutti coloro che sono intervenuti, a tutti gli speaker, a voi che siete qua, i survivors, che siete rimasti col caldo, anzi col fresco, come dicevamo prima, agli interpreti e alle interpreti, agli organizzatori, a tutti quanti, vi ringrazio e vi dico buona serata e a presto. Ridate mi raccomando le cuffie perché sennò andiamo in prigione, quindi per favore. Grazie.